Hello. I'm extremely sorry for some technical issues. I don't know, suddenly this new normal is not going on its way. So you can begin again.
Okay, good. Can you see me? Can you
Yes,
see
sir.
the slide? Yes.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Slide number 1, number 2.
Yes, sir.
Good. Okay, let's start. Is it okay? Can I start?
Yes, sir.
Good. Great. So, people, it's a great honor for me to be here with you and to share some thoughts, some impressions, and maybe even some, well, experience of dealing with the COVID 2019, which is still a very important social problem. Probably it's the most important social problem of all the times of this century, surely. Yes, it's not a war, but it's it's an epidemic which is like a war for us, for everyone, because we need to fight for our lives. We need to save our lives, and we need to save them for our families and so on. And for doctors too, it was a real challenge everywhere. So, first of all, just a disclaimer. Here, I'm talking as a private person, I'm not expressing the views of official bodies of Russia. I'm Russian, I'm a Russian doctor and a medical teacher, but I'm not expressing the official position. And I'm not expressing the position of Sechenov University. I'm talking about my experience, I'm talking about my thoughts, which can differ from the opinions expressed by the Sechenov University authorities. It's an important disclaimer because I'm not an official person here. I'm a doctor, just a doctor, one of many doctors here in Russia. Okay. Some words about, well, me. You already know that I'm a medical teacher. I'm an associate professor. And I've participated in the struggle with COVID, but my participation was not the red zone. Please try to understand me. It was not the red zone participation. I will not lie to you saying that I'm a hero and I fought COVID and I saved dozens of lives and hundreds of lives and so on. I did do some consultations of patients with COVID. First, they were face-to-face, but after the imposing of all these protective measures and so on, the consultations were long-distance consultations. But I followed many patients with COVID-19, and I followed them up. I traced their condition because their attending doctors just talked to me about their condition. We adjusted the treatment regimens and so on, so on. So I participated, but it was not red zone. I'm not a hero. So please understand this. But I can tell you the whole impression, the whole picture, because I'm in the center of all these things. Even now, I'm just getting some calls from my colleagues. We just discuss some cases, and I follow all the research which deserves attention. While I'm here teaching my students and doing the things, yes? So, first of all, how has COVID affected the world? The first and most, maybe the clearest thing is that excess mortality, including medical workers and the elderly. You all remember the tragedy of Italy when the old people died, when the elderly have died. A lot of them have died because of this COVID 2019, and it was a really well, a tragedy to see. It was very hard to see that many elderly people died without their relatives around them and so on. So it's a real tragedy, and it's like a war, in fact, especially for those who live in the peaceful territories, who didn't have any widespread wars who hadn't had any widespread wars for a long time. For example, in Russia, we haven't had a real war for more than, well, 70 years. For more than 70 years. So it's a problem for us. I don't know about other countries, but it's a problem for Europe. It's a problem for United States. And it's a problem for us, of course. It's an extreme burden on economics and medical care. 3% contraction of the world economy, which is equal to the Great Depression era, as they say. I don't know if it is an exaggeration or no, because you need to understand that there are lots of rumors and lots of fake news around these epidemics. It's really, it's a strange thing. It's a surprising thing. How many rumors, how many unreliable sources of information we see every day. But well, maybe it's because we don't know exactly the mechanism of action of this virus. We don't know exactly what does it do to our bodies. So that's why there are lots of rumors, there are lots of speculations, there are lots of other things, and every politician, well, politics is a dirty thing, you know. In India, in Russia, in United States, everywhere, it's a dirty thing to be involved into politics. And of course, many politics use this situation for their own aims. The presidents, the other parties, the opposition, they all use all these things. So that's why we cannot precisely estimate the burden of coronavirus on the world economics, on medical care, but I can tell you that it's enormous. According to, well, my eyes, what I see, it's enormous. What is important is that it has caused profound changes in the society. It's not about money. It's about society. It's, first of all, which is very evident for me and for my colleagues and for my friends, for everybody, is disconnection between the people. Disconnection. We're not connected anymore. We cannot get into contact, into physical, just simple physical contact with one another. It's a very bad thing, because physical contact, because seeing eye to eye, seeing a person eye to eye, is very important for communication. Disappointment with the conventional medicine, even among the doctors, not only with the lay persons, but among the doctors. And it's very logical. Just imagine, ordinary people are waiting for remedies. They're waiting for miraculous cure of coronavirus. They just keep saying, it's not possible, it's 21st century, and you people keep dying because of some virus. Please do something, please do something. We're trying to do something, but we don't have any good remedy, any good medication, any tested medication. And all the medications we use just fail. You remember the problem with hydroxychloroquine, yes, which was advertised, which was proposed by President Trump, and it was very widely used everywhere. It had been used for several months before the doctors, the clinicians just said, please stop, because it's not effective. Unfortunately, it's not effective. And now we don't know any good etiotropic, you know this word, etiology. Yes, we treat the cause, and this is the best treatment when you treat the cause. For example, a patient has pneumonia, which was caused by streptococcus. You give antibiotics, they kill streptococcus, and the patient is okay. Yes, this is the best treatment. We still don't know the drug which can be used for treatment. We still use symptomatic treatment. And by now, the best treatment for the patients is still symptomatic. What is it? Heparin, yes, maybe paracetamol to bring down the fever and so on, so on. And well, essentially that is all we can use. Yes, there are vaccines, there are some antivirals, but still they were not tested. They did not show, they haven't shown their efficacy, unfortunately. And it causes disappointment. It causes disappointment even among doctors. I've been disappointed with the modern medicine, with the conventional medicine, because so much money was invested into scientific work and no use. Polarization of society. Polarization of society is very important because there are those who support the conventional preventive measures like wearing masks and so on, and like the others who think it's some kind of conspiracy against the humankind, conspiracy of people who work in the banks, conspiracy of, well, anyone, you see. Yes, it's polarization of society, and it's a bad thing. It's a really bad thing. Okay, just a reminder, number of coronavirus cases. Russia is number 4 nation most affected in the world. And first place is taken by United States. Then there is India. Yes, it's a very important problem for you now. There is Brazil and there is Russia. Yes, we have more than 1 million cases, not dead people, but more than 1 million cases. Yes, you see, it's a huge number. It's a huge number. Yes, and it's only half a year, starting from March and until September. It's exactly half a year, 6 months. Number of novel coronavirus deaths worldwide. Look at this. Yes, it's an enormous number, especially United States. They are leading country in deaths. Brazil and India. And Russia is something like 10th place, something like that. 19,000 people dead because of coronavirus. But here we can see some problem with statistics. The point is that we didn't include many cases into these statistics. In fact, the number of dead people because of coronavirus is higher in Russia. It's higher. It's not 19,000. It's much more, because many of dead people, they were included into statistical reports as those died of pneumonia, died of myocardial infarction, died of this, died of that. And United States include all the dead people with the diagnosed COVID, with the diagnosed coronavirus. They include them into the statistics. And it could be a bit ridiculous because, in fact, there were cases when a person positive on COVID died in an accident, in a car accident, and this person was also included into the death toll of coronavirus, as if this person died of not because of car accident, but because of coronavirus, because he was positive for coronavirus. It's ridiculous. And it shouldn't be like this, in my opinion. But in fact, of course, we have much more cases of deaths, much more deaths than this 19, but it is still not like in the United States. And we don't know why. Probably there is some genetic predisposition. Probably there is some, maybe they speculate that the anti-tuberculosis vaccination could have some protective effect against the coronavirus. Yes, because all the people here in Russia, they are vaccinated against tuberculosis. In the United States, they are not vaccinated. And we are vaccinated because it's an endemic area for tuberculosis. And they say there is some connection, but we don't know for sure. We don't know for sure. Rate of coronavirus tests performed in most impacted countries. Look at this: Israel, United Kingdom, USA, and Russia. So many tests, yes, so many tests, and the tested people are included into statistics as positive cases, and maybe it also can, well, it's statistics. You see, there are lies, there are big lies, and there is statistics. You see, there is a saying which is very widely used by people everywhere in the world, yes, because you can prove anything with statistics. Okay, just a timeline, a short timeline. How did it start in Russia? It all started, well, we first noticed the first cases of coronavirus. The virus was confirmed to have spread to Russia on January 31st from China. Yes, you see, you can see on this slide, 2 Chinese citizens tested positive, and it led to restriction of border with China, and widespread testing started in Russia. Then on 2nd March, there were cases in those who returned to Russia from Italy. Yes, and this is another area, another geographical area, and probably those were these cases who initiated the epidemics in Russia, because in February we still were not very aware of this. We were skeptical. I personally was skeptical. I said, well, coronavirus, what does it mean? It will have no impact on Russia because it will only be localized to China, to the Chinese area, to the Chinese territory. But unfortunately, it spread very widely to Russia. And in March, we understood that something is wrong. Something is very, very wrong. So in middle and in late March, they started widespread measures. They initiated widespread measures to stop the progression of epidemics, canceling events, closing schools, closing theaters and museums, and shutting the border, and even declaring the non-working period. Yes, we had a non-working period which lasted for about 1.5, 2 months. It was a long one. It was until May, until mid-May, something like that. Yes, and we were confined to our apartments. Yes, and if we needed to go out, then we did it very early in the morning, when there were still no policemen in the streets, because policemen, they just overviewed all these things. They inspected the streets and so on. In some cases, there were some cases of getting fines for being in the street, So most regions, including Moscow and St. Petersburg, the largest cities of Russia, declared lockdown in the end of March, and it lasted until something like May 11th. So it was lifted on May 11th in Moscow. Okay. There was a question, because I got a set of questions from you before this video conference, before this webinar, and one of the questions was, why did Russia help other countries? Well, I cannot tell you this because I'm not a Russian authority member. I'm not president. I'm not a prime minister. Yes, Russia has always helped others when there were some circumstances, and probably our president, our government decided that it's a good time. It's a very good moment to show some generosity. So in February 2020, they tried to help China in coping with the epidemics. China is a very closed country. It's a very closed country. We don't know exactly what's happening in these countries, so that's why it's difficult to say when did they cope with the problem. Then we sent military doctors to Italy. Well, we have emotional connections with Italians, because Italian culture is very respected here in Russia. So that's why while we only had some beginning of the epidemics, we followed Italy, and it was really a tragedy to see all these people dying alone and so on, these elderly people, all these priests dying and so on. And of course, this caused our government to just maybe to prepare some aid to Italian people, and then they sent some equipment to United States, but it later they found out that this equipment was in fact sold but not given to the United States. Okay, so healthcare system response. What was the response of healthcare system? More than 55,000 beds for infectious cases were deployed. Including more than 12,000 intensive care units and about 400 observatories. So what does it mean, deploying the beds? They even gave some large spaces, large malls. We have a lot of large malls in Russia, in Moscow, especially in Moscow. Yes, a lot of malls with a lot of shops there. You know, you have this in India too. Yes, and they gave away a large mall, the Crocus Expo, it's called Crocus Expo, and they gave it for the patients with coronavirus. They also gave some military hospitals which had only been being constructed. And they gave these facilities also for the patients with COVID. And in Moscow, they reoriented several hospitals for admission of COVID patients only, because they said that we will not mix the healthy patients, not healthy, but patients who have no COVID, and we will not mix the patients with COVID. And they said, let us make completely COVID only hospitals. And the most famous was the Kommunarka hospital, which was even considered to be a bit of like elite hospital, because some of the actors, some of the singers, popular singers, were hospitalized to Kommunarka hospital. It's very close to Moscow, yes. So you see, this is what happened, and many hospitals, including Sechenov University made all the 4 clinics located in the center of Moscow COVID only, and it's about more than 1,000 beds, yes. What was bad in all these situations, what was not very good, is that there was a gap between regions. Moscow and 3 other regions, they had sufficient number of intensive care beds. The others did not have sufficient number of beds, unfortunately, and that's why it was a real burden. The system of medicine was overloaded because it all started in Moscow, and the Moscow medicine worked very hard, but it managed to somehow, well, keep the situation restricted. But the other regions, Moscow, Russia is a very large country, you know, and the regions were not able to cope with it. So that's why the doctors in the regions worked for 24 hours. People just kept dying because they had no effective treatments. They had no equipment, intensive care equipment, the ventilation devices, and so on. It's a tragedy. It's a real tragedy. Yes, especially the far eastern regions were affected. Medical organizations had more than 40,000 devices for artificial lung ventilation, but more than half of them were older than 9 years, older than 9 years. So they were outdated. Many of them were outdated. And there were even cases, some very tragic cases we saw here in Moscow when a ventilation device just exploded, yes, because it was of very bad quality, very low quality. Preventive measures imposed by the government. So what were the preventive measures? Quarantines, raids on potential virus carriers, and even using facial recognition to impose quarantine measures. Ban of export of medical masks, random checks on the metro. Yes, so if you were on the metro without your mask on, you could be fined about $70 fine. Yes, and of course cancellation of large-scale events, theaters, cinemas, schools, universities. Also, all the classes were cancelled. Strict isolation of those positive with COVID or ill with COVID, using even smartphone applications. And there were lots of complaints about these smartphone applications. It's called social distancing applications, social distancing, social monitoring. It's what social monitoring, because it was like a geotagging of people. Yes, and they just traced their geographic location, their area, and sometimes these people were not precisely tracked. It was like they were inside, and this tracking application detected that they were outside of their apartments, something like that. It's a very, very disturbing thing, in fact. Prevention of tourist visits from affected countries. Of course, it's like a confinement, it's like a lockdown. Financial support to families and to businesses. We don't have a lot of small business, unfortunately. Small and middle, like middle range business. Unfortunately, no. But there was some financial support to these businesses. It's about the taxes and so on. So Russian gross product dropped 5.5% instead of growing 2%. Yes, so it's about the economical consequences of these epidemics. Monthly payments for families with children, and especially infants and toddlers, were installed. We got it for 3 months. 3 months, yes. So it was like a support for the families. And well, almost all the citizens were confined, were locked for about 1.5 months in their apartments. Yes, so we used some distance delivery of products. We had some shortage of products, of food, not the bread shortage, no, but there was shortage of some food in the beginning, in March. But later it was okay, later in March, April, but in May, in June, May was in the beginning of May, and as soon as the number of cases started to drop, then the quarantine measures were lifted. They were lifted, yes. But unfortunately, in the middle of September, we again see the rise of cases, and it means that we again will need to impose these lockdown. Look at these curves. Look at these pictures. Yes, cumulative number of coronavirus cases, active cases, recoveries, and so on. The number of deaths is not very high. Yes, you see, this is the red line. Yes, so percentage and number of deaths. Unfortunately, it's rather steady, but it's not very high. It's not increasing, but the number of cases has been increasing. Unfortunately, has been increasing, but the number of recoveries has also been increasing. You see the gray line here, which follows the blue line of confirmed cases. So it's not that bad. It's not that bad. But unfortunately, we still have a lot of cases registered by our sanitary authorities. People, is it okay with the timing? Do I have some more time?
Yes, sir. You can go ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Welcome.
So many things to tell you. Very interesting things. So you see, unemployment is on the rise. Yes, and it's logical. It's very logical. It affected every country. Unemployment is on the rise. Estimated change in value added in the Russian economy. Just look at this. Hotels, they suffered 85% low profit. Hotels, and those are people. It's not only businesses, it's the people who work there. They lost their jobs. Yes, you see other services, clothing, shoe production, culture, sports. Yes, you see every area has been affected. Every area. Maybe mask producers, those who produce masks, they benefited from all these things, but many other areas suffered a lot from this crisis. Mortality, according to the official data, the mortality rate was about 2.5%. 2.5% is much lower than in other countries. Yes, for example, in Italy, it was more than 10%. In France, it was also very high mortality. But people, I think it's not only about some genetic differences between the nations, but it's about statistics. It's about the way of calculating. It's about the way of registering the dead cases. But even if we make it 2 times more, even if we say that real mortality is about 5%, not 2.5, 2.6, but it's about 5. It's still much less. We don't know why. Maybe it's because of the age of people who fell ill with COVID 2019. Because in Italy, for example, if we take the extreme thing, Italy, we will see that the mean age will be very high, very high. So the elderly died. But here in Russia, unfortunately, not only the elderly died, but we have middle-aged people dying of COVID. So it's also a tragedy. It's also a difficult thing to suffer from. Yes, independent experts noticed the unusual increase of overall mortality in comparison to the with the year 2019. Yes, so for example, in Moscow, there were 1,800 more deaths than in April 2019. Sorry, it's a misprint here, not April 2020, but 2019. Efficacy of taken measures. I'm not an expert to assess the efficacy of taken measures, but look at this. Self-isolation index. The more is the self-isolation index, the less people there are in the streets. Look at this. The highest was in beginning of April. It was 4 points. And look at this. Now it's about 1. It's about 1.52. Yes, it means that there are many people out there in the streets, and it means that the spreading of infection can continue. So this is what they achieved with all these measures, with all this propaganda of wear masks, please wear masks. We even are required to wear gloves in the metro, in the subway. Of course, no one wears gloves. Yes, they wear masks, but they don't wear gloves. And we are required to wear gloves in the shops. Yes, well, it's a mandatory measure, and there are some guardians who look after these things and so on. Yeah, you see, it's important. I don't know what is the use of all these things, but well, you see. Passenger traffic, look at this. It was very low in the beginning of April, but now it's almost normal. It's almost normal. Yes, so it means that people just keep traveling around. They keep traveling to other areas in Russia, not outside Russia, because the borders are still closed. But they keep traveling here and there, here and there. And this is also a risk factor for propagation, for spreading of infection. Share of higher education institutions ready to implement distance learning measures. Very interesting thing. 60% of universities said that they work in distance learning mode without problems. Sechenov University also worked in the distance mode, for a long time. And now we have a double system. We have both long distance learning and face-to-face learning for those who are in Russia. For those who went back to their countries and were not able to return, we use the long distance learning with the special teachers allocated for this and so on, so on. But it's impressive. A lot of Russian universities were able to deploy a system of long distance learning. Of course, there were a lot of problems, but well, you see, this is life. What is interesting and what is very maybe unusual is that percentage of population who would like to be vaccinated. Look at these numbers. Only 40% of population would like to be vaccinated with the Russian vaccine Sputnik 5. What does it mean? In other countries, they say that if the vaccine were available, about 80% say that, yes, we are ready, we are willing. What does it mean? Only 40%. It means that people do not trust officials. Russian people do not trust officials, unfortunately. Yes. Treatment. First treatment options were infamous hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin. They were not very effective, unfortunately. And that's why later the doctors decided to use the symptomatic treatment and anticoagulants to prevent the complications, because coronavirus infection causes thrombus formation. Microthrombi are forming in many organs, and that's why heparin should be effective. And first observations of heparin efficacy were made in February. In March, some Russian doctors said that, well, we need to use heparin. We need to use heparin or low molecular weight heparins to fight coronavirus, not coronavirus, but the complications of coronavirus. Inhaled interferon was recommended by the most famous Russian intensive care institute, the Sklifosovsky Institute. They recommended inhaled interferon to be used through a nebulizer. Yes, and they claim its efficacy. Immune modulating medications with unproven efficacy were vastly recommended by official medical bodies. Yes, and they are not so effective. They did not show their efficacy. For example, Arbidol, maybe you heard about this drug, Arbidol, or how do they call it? Something, the virus, the name, then they changed the name of this drug. They gave it to Chinese researchers. The Chinese researchers said that, oh, well, yes, probably it's a bit effective, but we don't know exactly, we don't know for sure, and so on, so on. But it was widely recommended as a non-specific drug to support the immune system. Unfortunately, it was not very effective, in fact. The first vaccine, Sputnik 5, was officially registered in August 2020. And the results of investigations, the results of trial with this vaccine were even published in the Lancet. You know that in the beginning of September, they published the results of the test of the trial. But unfortunately, we could not trace the long-term consequences. So they found the rise in the antibody titer. It's good. yes, but they could not assess the long-term efficacy. They could not assess, will the patient get COVID, this infection, this coronavirus, the vaccinated person, will the vaccinated person get the coronavirus or no? They didn't get these results. They didn't get these results. Yes, they only got rise in titers. Well, it's good, but it's a laboratory outcome. But we need better outcomes. We need clinical outcomes. Of course, we were short of time. But well, you see, well, as a Russian citizen and a Russian patriot, of course, I'm happy for this vaccine and so on. I didn't get this vaccination myself. Yes, well, I will wait. I will wait. I will wait for the other vaccines to be available. I will wait. I don't want to test this vaccine. Yes, unfortunately, maybe it's a little bit of not being, well, it's about being egoist or something like that. But well, I would wait a little bit. Yes, more specific antiviral drugs, claimed antiviral drugs like Avifavir, are being marketed in September 2020. So two drugs were being marketed and claiming that they are very effective against and specific against the virus, but we still don't know the results. We don't know we don't have scientific papers about these drugs. We don't know the results of trials of these drugs, but they already were marketed. I don't know why they are in such a hurry, our authorities. I don't know about it. Very sad thing at the end of my talk. Very sad thing. So there was a very good article on all these things with photographs which caused, well, tears. Yes, in many people. Yes, with it was a article. The two journalists just got into one of the large hospitals, specialized COVID hospitals in Moscow, hospital number 52, which was completely reoriented for COVID patients. Yes, and they really there were a lot of pictures. There were a lot of photos of people who are in very severe condition, really dying. Yes, this is the intensive care unit. And some of people already are on the ventilation devices, and you see on the first side, you see on the interior side, you see a woman with in a prone position. Yes, it's a special position to improve the efficacy of breathing. Yes, this one is intubation of a patient who has a very severe respiratory failure. This is a nurse who was cured, yes, who recovered from COVID, and she's receiving a round of applause by her colleagues. She worked in this hospital. She contracted COVID, and well, fortunately, she was discharged from the hospital. Yes, and you see, this is the equipment the doctors had, and this equipment was much more serious than the equipment of those who worked in the other countries, and we still don't know why. It's like extremely dangerous infections, like plague, for example. Yes, they used several how do they call it, hazmat. Yes, these clothes. Yes, they used the eye goggles, they used special respirators and so on. They used even special shoes. Yes, rubber shoes. Yes, and of course they lost, the doctors during their shifts, they lost a lot of fluid. Yes, it was like losing several liters of sweating. Yes, sweating in all these clothes. I don't know why. Because I read some interview with with a doctor from France. I'm sorry, a doctor from France. He was a Russian-speaking doctor, working in an intensive care unit in France. And they had some talk with him, and he said, "I don't know why do they use all these double clothes, all these rubber shoes, and so on? Because the virus, it has no legs, it has no feet." It cannot just walk along the floor and get into the into the doctor's boots. Yes, it is inhaled. It is inhaled. Yes, it's mostly inhaled. I don't know why, but well, you see, those are our authorities. Yes. What is very tragic here? More than 600 health workers, doctors, nurses, died of COVID-19 in Russia. It's unprecedented, absolutely unprecedented. In the United States, there were also only, I don't know, 20, 30, 50 cases of dead health workers. But here in Russia, more than 600 health workers. Yes, and it shows that there was no complete efficacy of the response of Russia to these COVID epidemics, despite the words of our, well, officials, authorities. They say that everything was under control, everything is okay, the doctors get all they need. No, doctors in Moscow maybe got all they needed, but doctors in the regions, there were shortages of masks, even shortages of masks. Yes, and most of the dead doctors, most of these dead doctors, they were not in the inpatient system, they were in the outpatient system. Yes, and it's a problem when you see a patient who has fever, for example, but you are not very well protected. You wear the same mask for many hours because of the shortage. The doctors had shortage of masks, for example. Yes, and they used the same mask for a long time, for many, many years. It's not many hours. It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. Maybe it's because of this. Many doctors died because of complications. They died not because of COVID, but they died of infarctions. They died of strokes. They died of other problems, which are maybe not directly due to coronavirus, but coronavirus could speed up, could accelerate the development of all these things, of all these complications. More than 600 health workers died of COVID-19 and associated things. Yes, they were known to work in the red zone and so on, so on. Just imagine 600 health workers, 600 health workers. And there is a spontaneous memorial of healthcare workers died of COVID 2019 in St. Petersburg. And you see how many photographs of middle-aged and young people, young doctors, our colleagues, doctors and nurses are there on this wall, yes. And it was a real heroic struggle, heroic fight of doctors here in Russia with coronavirus. But this struggle has not yet finished. We see rise in the cases, in the number of cases. We see another wave of restriction measures imposed by, for example, Moscow authorities starting from Monday. They ask those who are more than 65 years old not to go out into the street, to stay at home and not to get into contact with the others. Yes, you see, it's another kind of quarantine. It's another kind of lockdown. Yes, and we still don't know what happens later. We don't know what happens later. We're still waiting for the vaccine, for the good vaccine to be available, and we are hoping for the preventive measures, because still no good, effective etiological treatment is available. The only two effective, really effective options are heparins as anticoagulants and hormones. Yes, but hormones are used only on special indications, and heparin also should be used on special indications. So, people, that was what I wanted to tell you about Russia's response to coronavirus infection. Sorry for taking more time from your audience. Thank you.
It was a pleasure having you here, sir. Thank you so much for such an interesting session, and thank you so much for your precious time.
It was my pleasure. It was my pleasure. Any questions I can answer? Any questions you would like to pose? No problem with
So
that.
we would take the question and answer round at the end.
Okay, good. Okay,
Yes.
as you like. So
Yes,
I need to stay with you. Yeah, good, good,
yes,
good,
sir.
very good. Yeah, good. Okay, okay.
Welcoming our second speaker of tonight, Ms. Aanchal BHANDARI. She is a Bachelor of Medicine and Bachelor of Surgery from I.M. Sechenov First Moscow State Medical University. She is a tutor at Center for Scientific Career Society. She has done a literature review on role of renin in pathogenesis of Alzheimer's disease. She is a participant in Sechenov International Biomedical Summit. She has underwent summer medical observership in Shloka Hospital and has also assisted in outdoor patient department at Lifewave Hospital. Hello, Miss. Welcome to our webinar.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bijal. And I also like to thank Dr. Mikhail Pisrev, sir, for giving such an insightful presentation. For all the viewers out there, I want to say that Dr. Mikhail Pisrev, sir, is one of my professors. And from sharing a classroom to sharing this platform with you, sir, it's a great honor for me. Hello, everyone. We are collectively facing a pandemic threat that is sweeping across the humanity beyond oceans and borders. Every day, this novel coronavirus is reaching new and tragic milestones. So I want to begin my presentation. Are the slides changing?
Yes.
In fighting this novel coronavirus, okay, it's not sharing.
Can you just share it again? I guess there was some glitch. Slideshow mode.
Yeah, just a minute. Okay, sorry for the technical inconvenience.
It's okay.
As I was saying, in fighting this novel coronavirus, we all want a silver bullet cure. But how many of you are aware about the current therapeutic developments in COVID-19? Hello everyone, I'm Aanchal BHANDARI, a M.B.B.S aspirant studying in I.M. Sechenov First Moscow State Medical University, and in the next few minutes, I would like to walk you through some investigational therapies currently being used or being evaluated for COVID-19 patients. As we all know, coronavirus disturbs one of the most important function in our body, that is respiration. So we need to understand how it affects the respiration. I'm sure all of you must have noticed some spikes in this coronavirus. These spikes just don't highlight the look of the virus, but they also help the virus penetrate in the host cells. Our immune system recognizes this invasion and initiates an inflammatory cascade. During this process, our immune cells unknowingly damages the healthy lung cells. Thus, there is a fluid buildup and it hinders the gas exchange process, causing mild to severe respiratory deficit. So after understanding this concept, I would like to proceed towards our first and very important topic, which is pulmonary management in COVID-19 patients. So, the basic oxygen therapy is provided to patients with respiratory distress and hypoxemia. And the World Health Organization, or WHO, recommends that the target to be achieved for oxygen saturation in COVID-19 patients should be more than 94%. High flow nasal oxygen. You can also give oxygen therapy through nasal cannula in patients with hypoxemic respiratory failure. High flow nasal oxygen. It is an oxygen supply system capable of delivering up to 100% humidified and heated oxygen at a flow rate of up to 60 liters per minute. Talking about ventilatory support, the first thing I want to talk about is non-invasive ventilation or NIV. It is used for patients with hypercapnia, plus if the patient has some underlying respiratory disease, example COPD or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Non-invasive ventilation and high flow nasal oxygen has a very high risk of aerosolization. Therefore, these therapies are not used that frequently. Lastly, talking about invasive ventilation. Patients suffering from severe respiratory failure or respiratory fatigue should be managed by mechanical ventilation. Also, mechanical ventilation has less risk of aerosol transmission as the patient is intubated with a closed ventilator circuit. My next topic I would like to talk about is investigational drugs and therapies. I'm sure most of you are aware that the coronavirus goes for your lungs. So, before talking about the drugs used in COVID, we just need to understand the pathogenesis of the virus so that we can reduce the targets for its treatment. The spikes protein, which I mentioned earlier, binds to the ACE2 receptors and the viral replication begins. I'm sorry. Yeah. So, as I was saying, the spikes protein, which I mentioned earlier, binds to the ACE2 receptors and the viral replication begins. So, one of our targets would be to stop this viral progeny. With the interaction between spike proteins and ACE receptors, a plethora of inflammatory mediators such as cytokines are released, and this phenomenon is called cytokine storm. This leads to lung cell damage and fluid accumulation. So another target would be dismantling the action of these inflammatory mediators. So we have reduced two treatment targets. One is to stop the viral replication, that is to stop the growth of the virus. And second, to reduce inflammation and damage of healthy lung cells. Now talking about the drugs. There are currently more than 400 drugs in the race for coronavirus cure, out of which 314 drugs are in human trials and 90 plus drugs are in preclinical trials. I know you guys must be wondering, why haven't I listed hydroxychloroquine here? The reason is that the Solidarity trial conducted by WHO states that, I'm sorry, why is this share screen is not working?
Okay, it's okay.
The reason is that the Solidarity trial conducted by WHO states that hydroxychloroquine doesn't reduce the mortality in COVID patients. In fact, it is not even effective in moderate COVID-19 patients as well. Also, it can cause some serious ophthalmological, cardiovascular, and side effects. Antivirus is the list would be remdesivir, a pro-drug currently being used and evaluated almost in the entire world, to the extent that many hospitals globally are facing shortage of this drug. So how does this drug work? As I mentioned a few seconds ago, that it is a pro-drug, so it has to convert into its active form. One of our treatment targets was to stop the viral replication cycle And this is what remdesivir does. It interferes with the RNA-dependent RNA polymerase and in turn inhibits the viable viral progeny. This drug is given up to for 5 days. According to latest studies by Gilead Sciences, remdesivir has been proved effective in COVID patients who are hospitalized, and it can reduce the recovery time up to 4 days, that is from the 15th day till the 11th day. This drug is available only in intravenous forms. Therefore, it limits its applications. A similar drug, galidesivir, is approved in Russia for the treatment of COVID-19. Coming up next is favipiravir, again an antiviral drug sharing a similar mechanism as remdesivir. It is used to treat patients with mild COVID-19 disease. It is a broad spectrum antiviral and is available both in oral and intravenous forms. This was the first drug in China which got a green signal for treating COVID-19 during the initial months of the pandemic. It is also being widely used in India under the brand name FabiFlu. It is given up to 14 days. Originally used to treat influenza in Japan, currently favipiravir is in phase 3 trials conducted by Glenmark Pharmaceuticals. However, there is one concern about this drug, that this is a teratogenic drug, meaning it can cause fetal death and should not be given to pregnant women to avoid fetal toxicity. Next up in the list is darunavir. Previously approved by FDA for treating HIV, darunavir is a protease inhibitor. Protease enzyme is necessary for viral maturation. Thus, binding to this enzyme, it halts the formation of mature virus particles which spread the infection. It is generally given in combination with ritonavir, which enhances its antiviral activity. This combination is given up till 14 days. Unfortunately, the recent studies conducted by Shanghai Public Health Clinical Center show that this drug is not that effective. Now, the next set of therapies which I'm going to talk about has orchestrated on the idea of mimicking the immune system. And firstly, I want to talk about tocilizumab. MAB meaning over here is monoclonal antibody. So tocilizumab is an inhibitor of the receptor of interleukin-6. Previously, I had spoken about cytokine storm as one of the mechanisms in the COVID pathogenesis. This drug is used to reduce the interleukin levels as patients with severe COVID develop large interleukin-6 levels. But it is a very expensive drug, and one dose of this drug can cost up to 15,000 rupees or approximately $200. Tocilizumab recently has failed to reduce mortality in COVID-19 patients, but this drug is still being explored in combination with an antiviral. Next, therapeutic plasma exchange or TPE. It is a blood purification technique designed for removal of large molecular weight toxins and inflammatory mediators such as interleukins, tumor necrosis factor, and other inflammatory parameters. Latest studies show that therapeutic plasma exchange can reduce mortality and can give free intubation days. Coming up next is convalescent plasma. I'm sure most of you have heard this, that the patient is being treated with plasma therapy. So, what is this convalescent plasma? Convalescent plasma is collected from infected COVID individuals to passively transfer antibodies, and it is currently being used to treat severely or critically ill COVID-19 patients without unexpected or serious adverse effects. Studies show that convalescent plasma, preferably with high antibody titer, should be given early prior to intubation and life-threatening inflammatory end organ failure. On July 23rd, FDA has approved emergency use of convalescent plasma for COVID-19 patients. TB with convalescent plasma is proving to be a booming treatment therapy for COVID-19 patients. Intravenous immunoglobulins. Immunoglobulins are the antibodies produced naturally by the body's immune system, which help fight infections and diseases. Basically, these are the soldiers which protect us from any virus or any infection. Intravenous infusion of these immunoglobulins by healthy blood donors is another treatment regimen opted by the healthcare professionals. It differs from the convalescent plasma therapy in that the blood donation is not from individuals recovered from COVID. Study reports have shown that it reduces the use of hospitalization and mechanical ventilation. It has commenced phase 4 trials. Corticosteroids, popularly known as steroids, are used to tamp down the inflammation, and there are two main drugs in this category currently being used: methylprednisolone and dexamethasone. These drugs are linked with one-third reduction in deaths among COVID-19 patients. Also, National Institute of Health recommends using steroids in patients who are on ventilator or are receiving supplemental oxygen. These drugs are given for about 5 to 7 days. A very important information I want to portray here is that there is no drug which is approved by US FDA for COVID-19. These drugs are just doing their clinical trials, and these are investigational therapies. We have known for a long time that nutrition is intricately linked to immunity and to the risk and severity of infections. Therefore, it is imperative for all of us to pay attention to our diet and nutritional status during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Intake of specific nutrients may help boost our immunity towards coronavirus. To give a few examples, we have vitamin C, a cofactor for many enzymes. It is a powerful antioxidant, and it has shown to reduce the duration of the stay in the intensive care unit or ICU and need for mechanical ventilation among COVID patients. Citrus fruits, broccoli, green and red peppers are some of the rich sources of vitamin C. Talking about vitamin D, evidence from several clinical trials and pooled studies show that vitamin D supplementation lowers the odds of acute respiratory tract infections. Salmon, tuna, egg yolks, mushrooms, and milk are some of the vitamin D enriched foods. Lastly, but not the least, zinc. Inadequate zinc levels limit the individual's ability to mount an adequate immune response to infections. Multiple meta-analyses and randomized controlled trials have shown that oral zinc supplementation shortens the duration of flu-like symptoms by approximately 2 days and improves the rate of recovery. Oysters, tofu, lentils, yogurt, and oatmeal are some of the zinc-rich foods. I know it's a tough battle out there for all of us, but we can take some comfort from the fact that far more is known about controlling SARS-CoV-2 than was understood 10 months ago. It is up to all of us to learn, adapt, and apply those lessons effectively. I would like to thank Y-Board and Y-Blackboard and its founder, Mr. Nalini Kanta Swine, for giving me such a huge platform to talk about COVID-19 therapeutics. And I also would like to thank the viewers for being such a kind audience and for listening to what I had to say about this topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Aanchal, for such a wonderful session. It was a delight to have you here with us. Hello? Aanchal, can you hear me?
Yeah, I couldn't hear you.
It was a delight to have you here with us. Thank you so much for being here.
The pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much.
Moving ahead, I welcome our next speaker for tonight, Ms. Priya Trivedi. She's a clinical research scientist at IQVIA. She has previously worked at National Rural Health Mission a Government of India organization. She has done her Masters of Pharmacy in Pharmaceutical Sciences. She has successfully completed coursework and training at Internal Audit and GCP. She has also done a project on anti-inflammatory property of Google. Ma'am, we are honored to have you here with us today. Thank you so much for joining us. You can take over. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bijal, for this wonderful introduction. I just want to confirm, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Okay. So first of all, I really like to congratulate the Why Blackboard team for organizing such a fruitful event. I'm sure that the viewers are really getting benefits from this webinar, and they will know about the COVID-19 treatment and the vaccine development. So before starting my presentation, I really like to send my warm greetings to all the panelists. And I congratulate Dr. Mikhail and Aanchal for giving such a descriptive and informative session. It really helped a lot. I welcome all the viewers. I am Priya Trivedi and I am a clinical research scientist at IQVIA. And in my today's session, I am going to tell you about the clinical trials of the investigational COVID-19 vaccine. So I'm just sharing my screen. Just confirm once you see it, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. All right. So today I'm going to tell you about the clinical trial and how the clinical trial functions. So I'm going to cover all these topics, and in a very simplified way, I'm going to tell you that how the clinical trial of a vaccine functions, okay? So first we will start with the vaccine testing and the approval process. What are the stages the vaccine has to go through before coming into the market? Okay, so first is the exploratory stage. Now, as the name suggests, what is explore? In this exploratory stage, the scientist discover and identifies the natural and the synthetic antigen against which the immune response is required. Okay, so it usually takes about 2 to 4 years to complete this particular stage, but now we all are aware that the whole world is in grip of the novel coronavirus. So the whole country and the whole health organizations are working day and night so that the vaccine development of COVID-19 can be fast tracked. Okay, so once the exploratory stage completed, the preclinical stage comes. In this, the laboratory worked vaccine is administered into the animal. The animals are specifically mice and monkey. So what results we required from this stage? Firstly, the safety of vaccine. We assess the safety of vaccine. And second, the immunogenicity. What is immunogenicity? It is the capability of vaccine to provoke the immune response into the body. So we assess these two parameters during the preclinical stage. Okay. Now, second, once the preclinical stage successfully completed and the exploratory stage successfully completed, the sponsor may go for the IND approval from the FDA. During this IND approval, the sponsors have to submit all the documents and the laboratory results in front of FDA. And FDA have all the authorities and all the power to either approve or deny it. On what basis the FDA approves or denies? Okay, so if the investigational vaccine is showing so much of adverse event and side effects in animal testing during the course of animal testing, the FDA can deny the approval of the testing of vaccine in the humans. Okay, so in the IND application, the sponsor also have to give the clinical trial protocol to the FDA before testing into the humans. Now, the FDA has 30 days to either approve it or deny it before the human trial development. Okay. Next comes the clinical development. This is the most crucial phase of the vaccine testing. Now, there are three subsets or the three phases of clinical development: phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, that I will be covering in my later slides. The next comes the regulatory review and approval. After all the phases and all the trials completed, the sponsors can go for the FDA approval and the regulatory approval of the vaccine. I will be covering this topic as well in my later slide. Now, if the sponsors get the license for the vaccine, then they can start manufacturing it in a larger scale. But I must mention here that the FDA at each and every point checks the purity and the potency of vaccine during the manufacturing as well. So there is a keen eye on quality during the manufacturing of vaccine. Okay, so since I am in a clinical background and I am a clinical research scientist, all my friends and families are usually asked me that why the vaccine is not coming, why is it taking so much of time? So I must tell them through the why Blackboard that yes, I must admit that the vaccine trials are critical. Unlike the other medications, the vaccine trials, they demand the special considerations. Why they are special, why they are critical? First, we know that the vaccine are usually given to the healthy individual. Now, unlike the other medicines, the medications are given to the subjects or the patients which have the underlying disease, but the vaccines are given to the healthy individuals, mostly to the children and infants. So the sponsors or the regulatory bodies have to make sure that the vaccine is 100% safe to administer into the body. Second, the vaccines are given to prevent the disease. This limits the tolerability of adverse events. We cannot tolerate the adverse event, side effects, and the serious adverse event in the vaccines during the trial. Now, vaccines, as you all know, that these are the either they are synthetic antigen or they are natural antigens, so they are biological products. So these are very complex substances to handle. That's why it is very critical to analyze the vaccine production at each and every point. Second, since vaccines are biological, they require specialized assays and testing to assure that these are 100% safe to administer into the healthy individual. Now, as I have told you before, that the most critical and crucial phase of vaccine development are the clinical development of vaccine into the human. Now, this is the phase which defines or which says that whether the vaccine will approve or fail. Now, these comprises of three sub phases. First is phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. I am going to tell you the basic difference between these three phases. First difference, the population of the subject. In phase 1, from 20 to 100 or 100 patients may volunteer or take part into the clinical trial. In phase 2, several hundred people can volunteer and take part into the trial. And in phase 3, several thousand people are analyzed during the trial. Okay. In phase 1 study, what we usually and what is the outcome we usually expect from phase 1? First is safety and second is immunogenicity. Now, safety is very important, as I told you earlier, that since the vaccine is given to the healthy individuals, so safety is the first and foremost point should be taken into mind. And second is the immunogenicity, that whether the vaccine is producing the specified immune response into the body or not. Second comes the phase 2. In phase 2, the subjects gets randomized as per the age, so that we can know the effect of vaccine at certain age groups. And also in phase 2, the dose of vaccine, the immunogenicity of vaccine, and the administration mode is identified at the time of phase 2 trial. Now in phase 3 trial, since phase 3 trials involves a larger population, so there are chances of several adverse events, side effects, and serious adverse events during the course of phase 3 trial. So this is the very critical phase which identifies that whether the vaccine is ready to approve and ready to launch into the market or not. Now we'll discuss more about the phase 3 trial, how it works, what are the trial design, what are the choice of control during the phase 3 trial. First, we will discuss about the trial design. In the slide, I have mentioned three words, which is double blind, randomized, and controlled. The effective trials are double blind, randomized, and controlled. What is double blind? The double blind trials is one in which the scientist or the researchers or the investigators and the subjects does not know that whether they have been given the vaccine or the placebo. Now, why it is important? Why the double blind trials are important? Because it to avoid the biasness during the course of trial. Second, the randomized. What is randomized trial? Say, for example, if we are doing the trial on 500 people, so we'll divide 500 people into half, like 250 and 250, and on 1:1 basis, the one portion of the subjects will get the vaccine, the investigational vaccine, and the second portion of the subjects will get the placebo. Now, why it is important? It is important to avoid the biasness, and also we will get the comparative results of both the investigative vaccine and the placebo. Second is controlled. Now, controlled is the COVID-19 vaccine is usually controlled by the placebo. What is placebo? It is usually the comparator which contains the inert material. Maybe it is the saline solution, or maybe it is the medium in which the vaccine is prepared. Now, as I told you earlier, that the double blinding is very necessary to avoid the biasness in the results and to achieve the endpoints of the vaccine development. Now, the choice and the feasibility of blinded, randomized, and the controlled trials depends upon the strategy in which the vaccination is being prepared. It may be depends and it may varies from the demographic and the epidemiologic characteristics of the study population. Now, before entering into the clinical trial, the subjects or the patients have to follow or have to include these inclusion and exclusion criteria. If they are not coming under the inclusion and exclusion criteria, they are not allowed to participate in the clinical trials. Now, what are the inclusion criteria for the subjects to enter into the trial? First, the COVID-19 vaccine are only studied into the healthy adults aged between 18 to 55 years. Now, second, they are able and they are willing to comply with all the study requirements. Now, there are certain requirements. Some are sponsor specific, some are FDA specific. So there are certain requirements on case to case basis. So before entering into the trial, the subjects should sign the informed consent where all the terms and conditions are written, and the subjects should be willing to comply with all the requirements. Now, there are certain procedures and tests which are, which conduct during the course of trial. So the subjects should follow all the instructions given by the investigators and allow all the tests which is required during the course of trial. Now, if the subject if the subject is female, now they should willing to practice the continuous effective contraception during the course of trial. Then also, during the trial, if the subject is in the trial, they are not allowed to donate blood in the outside domain. Second, as you all know that before entering into the trial, the subjects should, should sign the informed consent so that so that they can comply with all the requirements which are necessary for the trials to be conducted. Now, what are the exclusion criteria? The exclusion criteria is now there are, as we all know that there are certain terms and conditions, as I have told you before. The exclusion and inclusion criteria also may varies from one sponsor to another sponsor, but these are some common checks that I have mentioned. So there should be a planned receipt of the vaccine. That is, the subjects should not have administered any kind of vaccine before entering into the trial 30 days before. Okay, so there should be a prior receipt of investigational or licensed vaccine. Now, administration of immunoglobulins or any blood products within the 3 months preceding the planned administration of vaccine candidate is highly prohibited. The subjects are not allowed to take immunoglobulins before 3 months entering into the trial. Then any confirmed or suspected immunosuppressive or immunodeficient state, if the subject is having any kind of immunosuppressive disease, then they are not allowed to enter into the trial. Any autoimmune conditions are not allowed. And also if the subject is allergic, if the subject is having any hypersensitive history, hypersensitive disease history, then they are not allowed in the trial. Moving on to the next slide. Now the safety evaluations. As I told you that the vaccine trials are critical, and why they are critical? Because the FDA assess each and every point at the time of clinical trials of vaccine. Now, if the subject is experiencing the frequent adverse event, frequent side effects, and frequent serious adverse events during the course of trial, then this vaccine is not ready to be launched into the market. Now, all type of serious adverse events should be described in detail. On what basis this should be described? First, the patient's study name and the identification number should be there. Second, what kind of adverse event is the person experiencing? This should be in detail. Second, how long after the vaccination the subject experienced the adverse event? Next, the patient characteristics. What are the characteristics? Is there any underlying disease the patient is having? Next is the action taken. Like if the subject is experienced the adverse event, what are the actions is taken? What are the actions taken by the investigator against this adverse event? Then course of the adverse event, like the start date and the stop date of adverse event should be mentioned in the in the clinical trial files of a subject. Now comes the regulatory review and approval. Now, if we are assuming that all the trials goes well and the FDA has not halted any trials and any phase of trial, then the vaccine sponsor can go for the FDA approval. What sponsor has to do? They have to submit the biologicals license application, which is BLA, to FDA for the approval. Now, before the FDA gives license to the sponsor, both applicant, that is the sponsor, and the regulatory authority need to consider whether any reports of adverse drug reaction is raised sufficient concern to warrant a suspension of product development, to warrant and if the vaccine gets suspended for some or the other reason, it will again go to the testing procedure, and they have to follow all the testing all again. Now, these are the recent COVID-19 vaccine developments. I know these are some few examples, but I just want to highlight the candidates and the like, say for example, if we take the example of University of Oxford AstraZeneca, the Serum Institute of India, what they are using to prepare the COVID-19 vaccine. These are the Covishield and AZD1222. These are the virus and the synthetic antigen which are induced into the body of the subjects in order to provoke the immune response. So these are some recent development in the COVID-19, and I really hope that we all get immunized soon, and I really like to thank the BLACKBOARD team for giving me the opportunity to share my experience with you all, and I hope that all the viewers have get some of the gist of the clinical trials of the COVID-19 vaccine. Thank you so much. Over to you, Bijal.
Thank you so much, Priya ma'am, for such an insightful session on clinical phases. It was an honor to have you here with us.
Thank you. Pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much.
I now open the floor for question and answer session. Any one of you can take up the question. I'll be reading out the questions one by one. I just want to clarify, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, it's okay.
So, are symptomatic patients less contagious? Are pre-symptomatic people less contagious? This is the question by one of our viewers.
Good question. You see, let me answer this. Try to answer this. I didn't go into this issue in details, but as far as I know, the person who contracted coronavirus becomes being infective several days before clinical presentations. Clinical presentations appear, yes, and then ceases at about 7 or 10 days of full clinical picture. As for the infectivity, I think most infectivity can be seen shortly before the maximal presentations, the maximal clinical presentations, and during the maximal clinical presentations. This is, to my knowledge, as far as I know. Maybe my colleagues will give some additional details on this matter. Thank you.
Just to add on what Sir said, what I believe is that the person would be contagious, but the severity, or let's say if the patient is asymptomatic, it depends on the immunity of that individual patient. But if he or she, that patient, is comes in contact with other person, there is a high risk that it can spread the infection. But how your body reacts to the infection depends on the immunity you have.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Aanchal.
Well, you see, I would like to add something. Yes, I agree with the opinion of my respected Aanchal, respected colleague Aanchal. Yes, and I would like just to add one thing that. You see, the main mechanism of transmission is still airborne. Yes, with the particles, with the smallest particles which go out of the patient's mouth, out of the patient's nose, probably. Yes, so that is why the more secretions, the more clinical presentations the patient has, the more is his or her infectivity, probably. Yes, you see, so that's why I think most infectivity will be seen in those who already have some secretions and so on, so on. So that's why, yes, those who are asymptomatic are contagious, they are infective 1 or 2 days before they have full clinical presentations like this cough and so on, so on. But most infectivity will be seen in those with most secretions. This is technical thing, some kind of technical thing, I think.
Thank you. The second question is it safe to participate in a clinical trial?
Good question. Clinical trial of what? Vaccine, drug?
Vaccine.
Vaccine.
Especially during time.
Yes, talking about, I will speak for the Sputnik 5. They haven't seen any serious side effects of this vaccine yet. Yes, officially. I don't know the unofficial information, but I'm basing my opinion, my statements on the available data. And they say that apart from the usual side effects of any vaccination, like pain in the site of vaccination and a slight rise in temperature, which lasts for about 1 day, 2 days, and so on, there were no serious side effects of the Russian vaccine. So that is up to an individual person to decide, is it safe or it is not safe? It all depends. It all depends. Unfortunately, it's unpredictable. It's like with all the other vaccines we get. It's unpredictable. There is one chance per, 1 million, 100,000s that this vaccine can end in some serious side effects. But, well, on the average, they are rather safe.
Yeah, I just want to add something that the subjects may participate in the clinical trial, but before that, I told you that the sponsors usually sign the informed consent, so that all the terms and conditions of the investigational drug or vaccine is written in the informed consent, and subject has to go through before entering into the trial. So, the sponsor and the clinical trial organization cannot take whole responsibility, because they have already made the subject sign the informed consent. They are, of course, they are totally, take care about the safety the subject, but the ultimate decision is of the subject whether he or she wants to take part in the clinical trials or not.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
There is an urgency for vaccines. So, are COVID-19 vaccines being rushed through clinical trials?
Yes, I would like to answer this question. Yes, it is being rushed. Why it is rushed? Because see, we all know the severity of COVID-19 all over the world. So I told you that the particular stage or phase which usually takes 2 to 3 years for any other vaccine or any other medication, for this COVID-19, we all are doing fast track study. We all are doing the work in as little time as we can. So yes, they are rushing, but the safety and the efficacy of drug or of the vaccine is not being compromised. All the researchers, scientists, and the authority body are assuring that the vaccine is 100% safe before launching into the market.
Let me add something. Here in Russia, they made this vaccine, Sputnik 5. The principle of its contents, the principle of its work is based on the previous works. They already made some similar vaccines with the vehicle. As far as I remember, the vehicle is adenovirus, something like this.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a
Yes.
kind of. I'm not a scientist. I'm more a clinician. You
Yeah.
see, and this previous vaccine was rather safe. So they just extrapolate. This is called extrapolation. They extrapolated the safety of the previous vaccine to the safety of this vaccine. Yes, but of course it's unpredictable. What is really important is that phase 3 trials should be conducted, at least restricted, but they should be conducted to conform to the international requirements, because there are international formal requirements, and they were written with the well, not literally talking, with the blood. They were written with the blood, as they say. The strict rules, for example, the rules of traffic circulation were written with the blood. Yes, this saying means that they were written after the accidents, after some very bad things happened. Yes, so written with the blood, and these were also written with the blood of the patients who had some side effects and so on. So that's why, yes, that's why they undergo very strict testing. All these vaccines, all the drugs, and so on. And at least here, yes, we can skip some stages. We can skip some stages. We can skip some rigorous things. But in fact, despite this skipping, we need to have consistent testing, starting from phase 1 and reaching into phase 3. As far as I know, phase 3 investigations are now being performed here in Russia of this vaccine, but the vaccine is already available for the internal use, for the inner use, and for the use of the other countries.
Adding to what Sir said and Mrs. Priya Trivedi, I would like to say that although the trials and the vaccine development is rushing because of the necessity of the situation, but also if we look through this, there is advancement in technology, what we had 10 years ago or 5 years ago. So this also helps us to improve and to like hurry the vaccine trials. But I just want our viewers to know that it's not like we have one idea of vaccine today and tomorrow the vaccine is out. It undergoes, as Mrs. Priya Trivedi told us about, that it undergoes a lot of clinical phases, testing, trials, and before it comes into the market, it has been, tried on thousands of patients, and then it comes into the market.
Thank you. The next question is, what is the COVAX initiative for the development of COVID-19 vaccine?
Sorry, I've never heard about this initiative. Probably it's like some kind of mutual initiative, some combination initiative, but I've never heard about this initiative. Sorry.
Ma'am, you would like to take the question?
Can you please repeat it? It is the COVAX initiative that you're talking about?
What is the COVAX initiative for the development of COVID-19 vaccine?
Yes, yes. So COVAX is a Indian vaccine that we are practicing now in India. It reaches the phase 3 trial. As we all know, the Serum Institute in collaboration with the Oxford University are making the COVAX vaccine. And it is already in the phase 3 trial, and we are hoping that we'll get this vaccine soon. So as I told you that the criterias of all the criterias of COVID-19 is differs from one sponsor to another. We cannot predict the specific criteria because it is a novel virus. It is not same for all the sponsors, right? So the COVAX is I told you they are using the natural and the synthetic antigen, and they are administering into the body of and they are preparing the vaccine and administering into the subject so that the immune response we'll get the immune response from the subject. Okay, so what are the criterias and what are the inclusion and exclusion criterias? What are the specifications for that particular vaccine? We all know because it is quite an internal thing, because it is not open as yet. But yeah, I may assure you all that it is already in the phase 3 trial, and once the phase 3 completed, it is ready for the human use.
Thank you, ma'am. So we have question. So we have come to an end of our session. On behalf of Why Blackboard, I extend a hearty gratitude to Dr. Mikhail, Miss Aanchal BHANDARI, and Miss Priya Trivedi, ma'am, for sharing their knowledge and taking out time from their busy schedule. Thank you so much for being part of Why Blackboard. We are honored to have you all.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you so
It
much.
was my
Pleasure
honor.
is all mine.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Stay home, stay safe.
Yeah.
You're very welcome.
Yes.
See you. Bye.